The Sopranos is a show aired on HBO, first broadcast in 1999, created by David Chase. The show focuses heavily on immigration, specifically on cultural assimilation by Italian Americans. We see how they assimilate based on wealth, race, and gender. I would like to begin by focusing on differences in levels of wealth between the generations. If you have seen any other mobster pieces of media, you may notice that most of the time they don't really compare to the levels of wealth seen in mobsters in The Sopranos. For example, in A Bronx Tale, starring Robert De Niro and Lilo Brancato, these mobsters aren't dealing in nearly the same international deals that the Soprano crime family is. This is also seen in Goodfellas, where the mobsters take on more of the role of hit-and-run gangsters. In Taba Sinajad's 2016 paper, The Immigrant's Journey, Race and Trauma in the Sopranos, he discusses how the characters in the show have it different from their ancestors in two different ways. Number one, they have conformed to the more white, waspy culture of the northeastern US. And number two, they have far more wealth. As Taba Sinajad continues in his paper, the mobsters compensate for their ancestors. In the fourth season of the show, there is an entire plot line about anti-Italianism.
You know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. It's anti-Italian discrimination.
The characters feel threatened by Native Americans who are protesting against Columbus Day. However, these Native Americans are likely very disadvantaged by racial discrimination in the United States. A concept that has a strange relationship with every character in The Sopranos is whiteness. Almost every Italian character feels simultaneously disadvantaged because they are white but Italian, but extremely advantaged at the same time. Taba Sinajad goes on in his paper to discuss that the discrimination felt by early Italian Americans in the Soprano family likely passed down their trauma in regard to their race. So that is why all the mobsters in the show feel so strongly about it. A similar point is found in Jensen and Yoshimi's 1997 journal chapter, Immigrant Generations, where they discuss differences in assimilation between generations. There are many common themes between this publication and those found in The Sopranos. The worry of anti-Italianism was likely passed down so far along from their ancestors because each generation experienced their parents worrying about it, and the cycle repeats. As you will see, these characters don't actually really experience discrimination. Johnny Sack in New York even lives in a mansion that is likely worth over $1 million at the time of the show's release. In further regard to this publication, we see how characters of different generations assimilate differently. The first and second generation Italian Americans likely related far closer to the fellow poor. This meant they would have had a lot in common with African Americans, which is probably why they discriminate against them so much. In the third and fourth generations, however, the wealth they have accumulated relates them much closer to people like the Cusimanos, a wealthy family headed by a physician who lives near Tony Soprano. We see this in Coachella's 2005 journal article, Unmade Men. This article discusses that some of the most important aspects about their Italian racial identity is what they take advantage of most. Beyond wealth, there are many themes in regard to race. There are constantly incredibly racist remarks made about almost everyone besides Italians. There is even a season 5 episode titled Unidentified Black Males, where several instances are shown of characters from the show blaming crimes on black people. Meadow's boyfriend from season 3, Noah, is told by Tony to break up with Meadow because he is half African American.
What I mean is, like, we're Italian.
Oh, my dad is Jewish and my mother's family is African American.
Tannenbaum, right. But on your application to Columbia, you didn't check Jewish, did you?
No, they can't ask about religious affiliation.
Oh, right, of course. What'd you check?
African American.
So we do understand each other here. You're, Ditsum.
Excuse me?
Charcoal briquette, a moulignon.
What's your problem?
I think you know what my problem is. You see, your little friend up there, she didn't do you any favors bringing you into this house. Now, I don't know what the fuck she was thinking. We'll get to that later. See, I got business associates who are black, and they don't want my son with their daughters, and I don't want their sons with mine.
This concept of Italian Americans not, quote, mixing with African Americans is seen in multiple different pieces of media focusing on Italian mobsters. The first that comes to mind again is A Bronx Tale, where Calogero goes out with a black girl and several of his friends die because of ensuing racial conflict. It seems as though the modern day finally caught up with the Soprano family, though. I've already discussed about Meadow's boyfriend, and later on, AJ Soprano was also engaged to a girl of a different race, which was also not approved of. This could also be seen as a difference in assimilation between the third and fourth generations of the show's Italian American immigrants. The third and final topic under immigration is immigration and assimilation in regard to gender. One of the biggest themes in Italian American masculine culture is the ideal of machismo. This concept describes hypermasculinity along with degradation of women from Italian Americans. I found a great journal article by Bosham about it, published in 1976. With this hypermasculinity comes the rejection of any sort of femininity shown by men. This is why Tony has to hide going to therapy, and it is also why AJ Soprano gets so much hate from the show's fans. AJ Soprano is an interesting case of assimilation in himself. If you don't have much cultural experience with the show, AJ Soprano got a lot of hate because he was seen as whiny and non-conforming with his Italian background. There was even a video essay published on YouTube titled "A Defense of AJ," which has several great points about why a lot of the reasons for this hate were of no fault from him. I believe that he just had trouble with the intersectionality he experienced in being told he was advantaged and disadvantaged at the same time. We see AJ struggle to make an identity for himself, something that his sister Meadow excelled in. Every man in his entire extended family ended up being a mobster, but his father didn't want him exposed to that. What was he to do? Because of this, he ends up trying time and time again to establish an identity for himself in one way or another. He always failed because he has no guidance. AJ even ends up attempting suicide toward the end of the series. With male femininity in The Sopranos comes the discussion of Vito Spatafore as a character. Vito is introduced to us in Season 2, and until Season 5, he is just another mobster to the viewer. In Season 5, however, he is seen by Meadow's boyfriend Finn giving a blowjob to a security officer. He is later seen in a gay club in the episode Live Free or Die, where he is outed as gay by a couple of mobsters who were extorting the club. I found a great publication by Lynn Hibbard in her Fucking Vito, Masculinity and Sexuality in The Sopranos, published in 2012. This is a discussion of Vito all the way from Season 5. With Vito, it discusses homosexuality as a whole. Being out as gay in The Sopranos is something that is seen as just not being done. Homosexuality is discussed, but being gay just isn't right. After Vito is outed, Tony discusses with his therapist, Dr. Melfi, about how guys, quote, get a pass for being gay in prison.
How do you feel about homosexuality?
I find it disgusting. Men kissing men, holding hands in the street. Every fucking TV show now, they rub your nose in it. I know that the lesbian thing with the Jennifer Beals. It's not bad. She a dyke in real life? I don't give too much of a shit what people do behind closed doors with the consenting adults. Well, don't forget, I'm a strict Catholic. I agree with that senatorium. Says if we let this stuff go too far, pretty soon we'll be fucking dogs.
I hear a lot of ambivalence.
This guy that got outed, look, the guys that work for me are asking for head. His head. What the fuck? You know, him and me were in the construction business. Now some of these union old-timers, the contractors, they're not going to want to be seen with him. And I'm talking huge deals, major fucking dollars.
A lot of your circle must have done jail time. They can't be strangers to male-male sexual contact.
Well, you're gonna pay us for that.
Well, that's nice.
What are you gonna do? There's no women there. You're there 5, 10 years.
It is also pretty heavily implied that the biggest anti-homosexuality advocate, who is also the guy who ends up killing Vito, had sex with men in prison.
No leeway, no compromise, just stupid fucking jokes.
You want compromise? How's this? 20 years in the can. I wanted manicotti. I compromised. I ate grilled cheese off the radiator instead. I wanted to fuck a woman, but I compromised. I jacked off in a tissue. You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
How men treat women in the show in regard to machismo is also important. Susan Carr's 2005 publication, In This House It's 1954, discusses the treatment of women in the show. There is a lot of discussion surrounding the show, how Carmela, Tony's wife, uses her status as his wife, along with her being a woman, to extort Tony and his mobster way of life. Carmela constantly disapproves of Tony's lifestyle, but she will not go without the money that comes with it. We also see a difference in how women are treated by other women. After her husband is killed for being a government informant, Angie Bompensero takes over her late husband's business, and she is socially isolated for doing so. This is because she took the role of a man. To conclude, The Sopranos is an interesting show in regard to how it presents such an intricate, intimate view of immigration and how immigrant values aren't one-dimensional. It presents wealth as something that has grown familially, since their ancestors came to the U.S. Race and gender, on the other hand, are views that haven't strayed too far from those of their ancestors. At the same time, though, we can see how the youngest generation in the show have grown beyond these views. Cultural assimilation is an interesting thing, and perhaps the cultural views of characters in The Sopranos shouldn't be looked at from a standpoint of assimilation, as it has been so long since their ancestors came from Italy. Nonetheless, The Sopranos does a great job painting the picture of immigration and ancestry in the portrait of modern-day America.